Hey, what's up, everyone? It's your boy TeflonJohn coming to you courtesy of the Art of Reinvention brand. And today is going to be part one of my two-part interview series with Police Chief Ryan Zuedima of Lynchburg, Virginia's police department. And we're going to just talk about the challenges and the struggles of policing and community and try to use this interview to start a dialogue that will bridge that gap. Hope you enjoy. One love. Be blessed. Hey everyone, it's your boy TeflonJohn coming to you courtesy of the I Am TeflonJohn brand. And today we have a special episode. We have the police chief of Lynchburg, Ryan Zuedima.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're just having a conversation just to try to close the gap, bridge the gap between the community and the local police of Lynchburg. So we just want to start off with, who is Ryan Zuedima?
Yeah, so that's a complicated story, I guess. But so I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York. Raised there, went to high school there, college there, graduated college, and I knew I didn't want to live in the cold and snow for the rest of my life. So I always tell people I grew up and spent my life there until I realized I didn't have to. And then I got out of there, moved somewhere a little bit warmer. Moved down here right at the tail end of 1996. Take a job in the police department, and kind of been here ever since.
Okay. So what drives your passion to become a police officer?
So when I went to college, I was bent on being a stockbroker, believe it or not. And I thought that was going to be a great thing. I was going to make lots of money and all that. And started taking some math classes, realized maybe that wasn't my thing. And I'd done a ride along with a police department up there, and it kind of bit me a little bit. And I saw kind of how impactful officers could be in the community and the difference they could make. And so, and looking at that, I started exploring that a little bit. Did an internship with the police department up there, and then ultimately I decided that's where I wanted to go, and ended up, again, moving to a little bit warmer climate down this way. And so I've just been grateful to be here ever since. I call this home now.
Okay. So with everything going on, I remember going back and just seeing you in the community. You come out to a lot of community events. So tell me about your transition when you went from policeman to chief. Like, what was the mindset change and what was going on then?
Yeah, so certainly a lot of responsibility, no question. Responsible for about 200 employees, give or take, and about 82,000 residents, along with a whole bunch of visitors and guests that come into our community. So, not something I take lightly, certainly, but certainly a proud moment when I took it over. And then at the same time, trying to do everything we can to exactly what you said in the beginning, bridge that gap between the police and the community. That's an ongoing challenge. That's not something you ever solve, I don't think.
Yeah.
You've got to constantly work at it. You got to build those relationships each and every day. So, that's been a big part of what we've tried to do since I've been chief, at least, is continue to build on our past successes, build those relationships, and help folks understand who we are, because I think there's an education piece needed on both sides, right? I think we need to do a better job of understanding our community and how they perceive things that we do. And then likewise, we need to educate the community on what we do, and more importantly, why we do it. So.
Yeah, and I think it's good that you bring up the perceive and the perception, because now you see where social media and the media is driving everything. So that's why I think it's important that they see us together. Absolutely. Because, this might not get covered. It might not make the news. But if you were to throw me on the ground or if I were to smack you, then it'll be probably talked about for the next 3 months. So how important do you think it is for people to actually talk about the good side of police and community versus the bad?
I think it needs to be balanced like anything else, right? We are human beings. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a brother. And I think it's important for folks to understand that, and that because we're human beings, we make mistakes, and there are times where there are bad apples in every profession, my profession, your profession, doctors, lawyers, nurses, pastors, there's that chance that no matter what profession you're going to have that. So we've got to make sure that, one, we identify those folks and get them out as quick as they can. But I think it's just important we've all got perceptions and preconceived notions of each other, I think. And I think the reality is, the more we have conversations like this, the more you get to know me as Ryan and not as the police chief, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really critical, because it's really easy to throw stones at somebody else when you don't know them personally.
Yeah.
It's a little harder to do that when you know them as an individual, you know their family, you know what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. So I think that relationship building is really, really critical. And our men and women in Lynchburg Police Department do an exceptional job 99.9% of the time. They do great work each and every day. And so I think it's important to highlight the great work they do. And then also, we expect the community to hold us accountable if there's times when we don't do great work. And,
Got you.
So it's definitely a balance.
Got you. Now, what do you think we can do as individuals, like outside of you being a police chief, but you being Ryan and me being Jonathan? Like, what can we do to change the narrative? Because I remember when I was younger, I had a cousin and she was raised just not to like dogs. So she never was given an opportunity to, even, not make the choice of whether or not I'm going to fear dogs or not. And I remember going to my uncle's house and he's a dog lover. She just kicked his dog when he tried to come to lick her. And I noticed he didn't get upset. And I just thought that was weird. And I talked to him. He was like, man, her parents just don't like dogs. And that's how they raised her. So I think sometimes on both sides, you could be raised a certain way to feel a certain way about people and that you don't know the background or have the conversation. Same way now where you have a younger generation that may not know about the police and may not know about the African American community. And you're seeing this time and time in on your timeline. So what do you think is some things that we can do as individuals to kind of bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to educate ourselves. We need to spend some time in each other's shoes, so to speak. I've not ever grown up as a black man. You've not ever grown up as a white man, right? And so we have very different experiences probably growing up, I would guess. And I think the more we can understand each other, understand that upbringing, understand some of the things that we hold to be truths, whether they may be based in fact or whether they may just be based in what someone else has told us, right? And we got to question things, and I think we can't allow folks to drive our opinion on things. I'm a firm believer that, if I don't know you, if somebody walks in the door and says, hey, that's a really bad dude, well, I think I need to get to know you and make my own opinion on whether you're a really bad dude or not. And I think sometimes we make kind of threshold judgments of people. We immediately see them when they walk through the door and we already kind of size them up and say, well, that person is this or that person is that.
Yeah.
And I think, the more we sit down and talk to each other, understand experiences, it's really, really important because, a lot of times it's just ignorance, it's ignorance to not knowing it. It maybe, give the example you gave, maybe ignorance of the young lady who's just didn't know that dogs can be friendly and nice, right? Could be your best friend, didn't have that experience. So I think the more we can expose ourselves to people who aren't like us, I think that's a real easy first step. And sometimes that's awkward and sometimes that's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
But I think the more we do that, the better off we'll be together in the long run.
Okay. And I've noticed that I watched, I think it was like a news special where you were being proactive and go ahead and making policy changes and everything. And so one of our talking points is, wanting to be a part of a community solution. So for those who are watching and actually want to take part in it, what can they do? How can they partner with the police?
Yeah. So, we have at last count, and I probably misstate the number, but probably 40 to 50 ongoing community engagements with different organizations, individual groups. We partner with, over the years, we partner with everybody from Jubilee to Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and we partner with One Community, One Voice, and a lot of other church-related activities in the community. My biggest thing to folks is if you have an interest and you truly have a desire to want to help, you reach out to us, we'll find a place to plug you in, so to speak, and at the same time, if you've got activities or organizations that already have things going on that you think would benefit from our involvement, as long as we have the resources available to do that, we would absolutely want to do that. Because the key is we've got to get, if we're ever going to build these kind of bridges and relationships, we've got to get the public interacting with our officers in a non-enforcement capacity, right? If the only time you ever see a cop is when you call 911 because something bad's going on, right? That's not the time to build relationships, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't build them then, right? But the time to build relationships is when we're sitting down, having lunch together or going out and getting a cup of coffee together or something like that. And, building those relationships early on in those non-enforcement settings, I think is really, really important because, your interaction with a law enforcement officer, good or bad, you're going to share that, right?
Yeah.
If you have a really bad interaction with a law enforcement officer, you're going to tell all your friends, your family, your coworkers, right? But just the opposite, if you have a really good interaction, you're hopefully going to share that as well.
Yeah.
And, so that's why it's important we stress to our officers that, although we interact with the public every single day, the average citizen may only interact with an officer, once every couple of years or something like that. So they're going to remember how that interaction went. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's important that you said like the relationship. So we shape that. It's like going to work. The only time you see your boss is when you get written up.
Right.
You have this preconceived, relationship to, oh, here he comes or here she comes. And so I think that's important too, to see the both sides, see the human nature. That's why I asked who is Ryan Zuedima versus who is Cheif Zuedima, because everybody has a human side behind them. Like TeflonJohn is it's a pseudonym, something I go by. But the real guy is Jonathan Smith, getting to know that guy, getting to know Ryan Zuedima. And so I think that's important, if they're doing the community events, if people in the community can have conversations, because I think that's where it starts. I mean, you can do policy, you can do a lot of things in politics, but if it's not conversations, getting to know one another, I've had people in life that from the outside in, they look like bad people or nasty attitudes. But when I talk to them, I understand why. And it gives me more of like a compassion and more of an empathy towards how they are the way they are and why they are the way they are.
Yeah, no, and the reality is nobody knows what everybody else is dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's bringing some baggage to the conversation, and so trying to unpack that together, I think sometimes is helpful. And we've all got different experiences and backgrounds that I think if we take the time to learn about each other's, it will make us better people in the long run. It gives us again that perspective that we may not otherwise have, and so that's kind of our responsibility. Individually and collectively as police officers is to make sure that we're having those relationships built over time. That relationship isn't just, oh, I went to that community event and I talked to that guy, okay, check that box. You know what I mean? It's got to be something that is sustained over time, and people will recognize that, and I think that'll help build more support for what we do, because we don't police this community by ourselves in Lynchburg, right? We police it with our citizens. We're their partners and their protectors, and it's important that we have them bought into what we're doing. And the only way to do that is through building those relationships.
Okay. So our next talking point, you said you're committed to accountability and transparency, which I think this is a huge one. Just in the wake of George Floyd and things that are going on, you see a lot of people are just outraged for what they perceive as the lack of accountability. So I like the fact that you're being proactive once again and putting this in action. But could you go into more detail of what this means for Lynchburg?
Yeah. So if we don't have that transparency, we are never going to have trust or legitimacy in our community. And everything we do is built on trust. The badge that we wear right here, when we swear new officers in, we tell officers that is a symbol of the public's trust, right? You can't ever tarnish it, right? You can't ever do anything that shows that you don't have integrity, because once you lose that, it's gone, right? So we've got to build that trust. We do that a lot of different ways in the community. One, through some transparency stuff. We've had body-worn cameras here in Lynchburg since 2016, so we're 4+ years now into that program. We put our policies online on the web so everybody can look at those and see what we do and how we do it and why. Those have been on for about 3 years on there. And then we make sure that our hiring process is very, very thorough with a lot of what we do. We don't just we take about 2 to 3% of the people that apply here actually get hired. So it's a very thorough process. We make sure we vet those officers, everything from background checks to polygraphs to psychological checks, and then once we get them on board, we're also continuing to, monitor performance all the time. And, so part of that is to ensure that people know that when they call 911, they're getting the most qualified, most well-trained person who has been thoroughly vetted. It's not just, oh, hey, I think I'll go be a cop today, and we put them in a uniform and send them out. So I think that's important. And along with those, the transparency piece, we've had what we call a community policing advisory group since about 2015, and that group has gotten together ever since then, and monthly at some points. Then it switched to quarterly, but we meet as needed as well, and they help us develop policies. They helped us develop our body-worn camera policy. They help us review critical incidents. So if we have like an officer-involved shooting, we would actually bring them in, sit them down, go through that investigation with them, actually let them watch body-worn camera footage to see what took place. Because to your point from earlier, a lot of times social media gets stuff a little spun up, right? And it's not always factual. I mean, you or I can go on social media right now and put anything we want, and there's no accountability, right? We can just say what we want. So that group helps us with that transparency. They help us work through any community issues that are out there. They bring questions to us that the community may be asking about, and we try and make sure we vet that information through them. And we hope that group, one of the things that people have asked for throughout this is, as far as the transparency, is like a citizens review panel, and that group actually serves that purpose already and has for several years. We're going to look at how do we tweak that a little bit, maybe formalize that a little bit more, but we've got to hold ourselves accountable first and foremost. We got to make sure that the community understands that we have their best interest in mind, and those are just some of the few ways we do that. But we absolutely understand and recognize that the community has to be a partner in this, and we absolutely want them. If they see something going on that an officer did that they have questions about, we want them to call us. And we have a very thorough investigative process for any citizen complaints that come in. Those are all investigated, from one end to the other and back to make sure our officers' actions are within policy. And if there's ever any time that we feel our officers' actions may have gone not just in violation of policy, but they may have stepped outside the law, we have a standard here that we will contact Virginia State Police and have them look at that. And that's another piece of an outside agency looking at what we've done.
Gotcha.
One of the things since about 2001, we've had about, and I say this not to say that I'm proud of this, but I say this to say we hold our folks accountable. We've had about 54 officers since 2001 that have either been fired or have resigned in lieu of being fired. And that's a little less than 3 a year for an agency that's 200 people. But I say all that to say, we want to make sure no one wants a bad cop, right? And no one wants a bad cop even more than the good cops, quite honestly, because that leaves a bad name for us. It only takes one cop, as we've seen, to do something inappropriate, right, to kind of tarnish everyone else. So, we make sure all those complaints that come in are investigated thoroughly, and if we find someone's stepped out of bounds, we'll hold them accountable, whether it's through discipline or through termination.
Okay. Thank you for watching part 1 of my 2-part interview series with Police Chief Ryan Zuedima. Leave any comments below in the comments section, and I encourage you guys to subscribe to my channel for more content. One love. Be blessed.